Fight Island is absolutely real. We can tell you for a certain fact because we are standing in the middle of Fight Island right now, Abu Dhabi, and I mean really in the middle of Fight Island, not just Fight Island itself, but the infamous Octagon on the beach, where absolutely 0 fights will take place. Let's just be very clear about it.
Much discussed, much misunderstood. Nothing's happening in this cage.
I was a little bit shocked to think how many people thought there would be fights on the beach. I'm going to tell you right now, that would be an awful idea. It is hot. We're hearing about sunset right now, drenched in sweat, if you can tell.
I think the shirt's starting to go through.
Right.
See through, John?
It would just be out. The Reebok uniform, the fight kit would not be looking good. You just can't do fights here on the beach, unfortunately.
The deal's coming to an end. You want to go off with a bang. You don't want to send them out in sweaty patches.
That's right. But we will have fights nonetheless. It'll be inside the Flash Forum. It is a very nice air-conditioned venue. We were there earlier today. It's cool in there. It's not even as hot as it was back here last September. So while it may not seem like where the fights are taking place had any effect, I think it did last year in September. I think it was really, really hot inside that venue. I think it affected some people, and I don't think we'll have that this time around.
Well, no. When we showed people on Twitter that we were at the arena, most of the questions I got were about the AC, were about the humidity, but the temperature. I remember last in September, we had Joanne Calderwood saying that you couldn't warm up properly because you just gas yourself out. I really don't think that's going to be an issue this time. The whole thing is ventilated well. The media tent, which I think is the most important thing, is ventilated well, air conditioned, and yeah, I think the fears of the heat should be put at bay for a while.
Yeah, I think obviously fans want to know, are we taken care of? Is the media tent taken care of? That's what was important to know, of course.
You can always do more, John, but I think they're doing okay.
We'll check out how the catering spread is. All right, let's talk about UFC 251 that kicks this thing off. All right, unique fight week, right? Because we're getting ready to go in the fight week. Our first glimpse of champ Kamaru Usman and challenger Jorge Masvidal. I guess you don't even have to call him a challenger, right? The BMF title holder. The first glimpse of them that we're going to see is at the weigh-ins. Now, yes, they're doing some WebEx streams and that sort of thing, but we don't get to see them in person because this very unique environment that we're in here. They've got a quarantine just like the rest of us did. It's one of the most unique fight environments that we've ever seen. Yeah,
and you got to think for these guys as well. You know, you get on the plane, you think to yourself, it's going to be fine. And John, as you and I will attest, 48 hours in one room. I mean, I thought I could do well in prison. Apparently not. It's so dull. And then you've got to add a weight cut onto that. Jorge says he's got to lose 20 pounds. And I just wonder how successful will that be? Are we going to see some guys struggle to make the weight? And all the while that's going to play in their mind. And then on top of that, John, you've got the time difference. The time schedule's a bit crazy. These guys are going to be fighting at 6 in the morning, something crazy like that. There's not the same pressures we see on fighters this week, but there's a lot of new ones that I'm sure most of them haven't thought about before.
Yeah, it's really intriguing because you think about Jorge Masvidal stepping in on short notice. I mean, this guy's an uber veteran of the sport, right? Game bred, the name says it all. Almost 50 professional fights, anybody, any place, any time. But the deck does feel like it's stacked against him, right? I mean, stepping in on late notice, having all the travel that you said, not really training for a 5-round championship fight. I understand he was training, he was in the gym, he always stays in shape, but I don't know if it's going to be in Kamaru Usman shape. So I'm really intrigued by this fight. To me, that opening round is going to be so tense for me because Usman doesn't want to go out and make a mistake and do something silly and get caught because Jorge Masvidal obviously can knock you out.
Right.
But at the same time, Masvidal's got to push the pace a little bit, I think. I know he's going to want to try to leave a little bit in the tank for 5 rounds, but I don't know if you want to waste any time at all if you're Masvidal.
Well, I think there's the old adage, right? Does he try and think, well, I don't have the best cardio, so I got to go slower? Or does he think, listen, I got 2 rounds to put this guy away, I'm going for it, and that's going to be the way it is? I think a lot of people think Usman's strategy should probably get him against the cage, lean on him, tire him out. But, you know, Usman doesn't like the guy. You can tell he doesn't like the guy. And the last guy he didn't like was Colby Covington, who he stayed on the feet with for 25 minutes in what seemed like an attempt to prove a point. Could he be sucked into that by Masvidal, and that could be his undoing?
It's interesting, man. I really honestly believe that Kamaru Usman, the champion, is the right pick here. He's the favorite, and I think rightfully so. But Masvidal is such a wild card, man, what he brings to the table. So I'm intrigued by this fight. Again, early on, I think we're going to see how this thing is going to play out, what's going to happen, and then we'll see from there. The co-main event, a rematch as well, that I think coming in we were excited about. I mean, it's a big fight in the featherweight division. Of course, Max Holloway getting his rematch, trying to win back his belt against Alexander Volkanovski. But it took a little turn for both of us. Now, this is the first time we've gotten to do in-person interviews since this past March. Obviously, COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on fight weeks. But I think getting to do those interviews in person, seeing those two guys, and hearing what they each had to say, I kind of feel like there's a little, not that Max Holloway is going to talk any trash, he's a nice guy, but there's a little bit of tension between these two.
There is a little bit of salt on the steak, as it were. You don't get that stuff from the WebEx, and we've spoken about this before, so we won't bore you with it now. But you could tell that Volkanovski has taken Holloway's sort of apparent, I thought I won, to heart. You could tell he's really bugged out by it. And then on the embeddeds, you've got him and his coaches. They're joking about it, but it's those jokes where I'm not really joking. I'm actually really kind of mad. So it's kind of interesting to see him so bothered by it. And I do think it's not going to get into his head, but I do think he's got a point to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder, and it sounds like he's really coming in there to show Max, no, it's my era now. Whereas Max, the guy's always been cool. I don't think I've ever seen him look cooler. He looks well. His weight cut doesn't appear to be hurting him. He seems very happy. He seems really relaxed. You know, there's the old Zoom. Was he training on the Zoom? I've got to think that's a little bit of mind games, but the contrast between the two, their two energies, is very exciting for me. It's made the fight one to watch.
I agree. I feel like this one took on like a life of its own this week, kind of a new energy about it. And it's intriguing as well because, again, Alexander Volkanovski did have a very dominant performance in the first fight. I thought it was very impressive. But Max Holloway did have success late, so did he make the adjustments that he can carry into the second fight? Of course, Volkanovski, the new champ, is quick to remind you, oh, by the way, I knew I was up on the cards and I had a broken hand, so if you think you were getting the best of me, that was not the case. Now, the last title fight, 3 championship matchups on here. Jose Aldo versus Petr Yan. Amazing stylistic matchup as well. Say what you will about Jose Aldo being in this bantamweight title fight. Although I'll be honest with you, it's been interesting to hear his peers not really complain about it and say, look, this guy's a legend. Give him this opportunity. So I've kind of taken that on as well, no matter what you think about the Moraes fight. But I worried a little bit because Yan does seem like this kind of next era guy, right? But Aldo looks good, seems focused, said all the right things. Are we counting Aldo out a little bit too early, or is Yan the guy that we're going to crown?
Well, I've got to say, if you look back at Aldo's performance against Marlon, result what it was, I thought he looked the best he'd looked in years. He was so much more aggressive than we're used to. He was so much more dynamic in his striking. For years now we've seen Aldo just play the relaxed strike, and that's what lost him the Volkanovski fight. I think maybe he took that on board, he cut down, he tried to feel anew. And so for that, to see that Aldo go up against Petr Yan, I'm very excited for that. I think this has got a banger written all over it. But as you said, Petr Yan, he's good. Every so often you get a fighter, Sean O'Malley, people like that, Israel Adesanya, where you just feel like, next generation feel all over it. And I think Petr Yan is one of those guys, and so whatever it is, I think we're going to see, as Aldo said, it's either going to be fight of the year or knockout of the year, and I think it could be.
Yeah, you're crowning Yan as kind of this next generation talent, as we said, or you're seeing Aldo, who's already a future UFC Hall of Famer, getting the status of having that second weight division belt as well. So, look, it's awesome. I think for the longest time we just wondered if we were going to get to here.
Yes.
We are here now. It's starting. There's going to be 4 events. This is just the first of those. Important to note for the viewers back home. It's going to be prime time, your time in the United States. Not for us so much. We'll be up at 2 o'clock in the morning getting started, but we will have full coverage at MMA Junkie, of course, and the fellow World MMA Awards nominated Mac Life will also have full coverage.
Long time coming.
Keep it tuned to both places.
Yeah, thank you.